Our SABC 2 audience, we're coming to you live from the floor of the IEC Results Operations Centre. Some very interesting revelations that have come through this hour. And news just in, the National Freedom Party has just admitted defeat and thanked all its supporters for the support they've rendered throughout the election process. And as I spoke to the Acting Secretary General of the NFP yesterday, he did mention that there are so many issues that the party was grappling with, and they are working on a plan to deal with those issues. And another interesting revelation is that the Inkatha Freedom Party has just surpassed the Freedom Front Plus. They're now well over 300,000 on the national scale compared to the Freedom Front Plus, 274,632,000 votes. Capturing is at 67%, and about 10.6 million votes have been counted so far. Let me now chat to the leader of the Forum for Service Delivery, Mr. Bahare J. Kekana. Mr. Kekana, a very good evening to you and a warm welcome.
Evening. Let me also greet the viewers at home.
Now, your party has just scored 4,775 votes. 67% later, what are your impressions for this?
Our impression as Forum for Service Delivery is that we are not happy in terms of the freeness and the fairness of the elections, because a lot of irregularities has happened, and they are very, very deep in terms of their material effect. So we as Forum for Service Delivery, we have teamed up with other 30 political parties, and we are calling for an independent audit, and whereby our members or whereby our parties will observe the whole process.
Before we get to that, what are some of these irregularities? I mean, you've been talking about certain irregularities, but you're not very clear. Which ones are those?
All right. For example, in the Northwest, people were given three ballot papers, and it's against the law. You must have two, and you use those two. There are people who have voted more than twice in a lot of stations. Like, for example, in Moretele, whereby people they will just go around and remove the ink and also come in and vote. So even this ink, it's removable, and it's something that is against the law.
So when you say some of the people have been given 3 ballot papers, what kind of proof do you have?
We are in contact with our party agents, and we've lodged a complaint from there. And also, there were about 19 people who have been arrested for...
I mean, what kind of proof do you have about such irregularities, as you just told us?
The numbers are not tallying. The numbers of people who voted in the voters' roll, they are not tallying. So we have lodged those kind of complaints.
So these are the irregularities these are the kind of complaints that your party has lodged, or collectively with the other parties?
These are some. There are so many. We as a forum, we are having more members. But if you can check the number there, it's not making sense.
So any feedback from the IEC?
We have given IEC until 9 o'clock tomorrow. Failure for them to come back to us, we'll take another step.
You chatted to my colleague earlier, Dirk Kotze, about the fact that you are lashing out at the media for having not given you all the coverage that you necessarily needed. What do you mean by this?
Remember, in terms of ICASA, we were given slots, both on media, the audio and the visual. And our slots, our adverts were not played. Our adverts were not even flighted. And I remember, and these are parties that are getting grants to contest elections. So the ground is not even.
Mr. Kekana, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. I'm going to let you go for now and bring in a leader of the Women's Forum. Ma'am, a very good morning, a very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, sir. And our party is Women Forward, not Forum.
Okay, I beg your pardon. You have now scored 3,573. Are you at all impressed or happy?
We are not happy at all, more especially because of the irregularities that arose during the day with the IEC.
What kind of irregularities are you talking about?
Well, we had the PLC meeting today. The IEC confirmed to us that there were some irregularities in different stations, more especially in the Northwest, where people were given more than 3 ballot papers. Some of the deceased people also voted. Some of the people voted more than twice. And they accepted and admitted to that. And they also confirmed that they have arrested other people who were part of those things. But to our surprise, they took the results from those stations and brought them in front of us here.
I mean, I just spoke to the leader of the Forum for Service Delivery and asked him if he has documentary or video proof of those kind of irregularities, and it did not give me a clear answer. What kind of proof do you have? If the IEC were to ask you to adduce the burden of proof, what proof would you have?
We do have the video proof, and the IEC itself admitted to those irregularities. That is why they even say they arrested more than 20 people who did that. So we don't have a proof because they do have proof themselves.
Okay, so these irregularities are those that were spotted by your party or collectively with the other parties?
Collectively with other parties.
All right, Mayor, thank you so much. I'm going to let you go for now. We appreciate your time. Well, that was a leader of the Women's Forward. Yes, Mabosa Lidwaba. Let me just bring in the IFP's national spokesperson, Mr. Mkhuleko Hlengwa. A very good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
An absolute pleasure, Smil. Good evening to you and the viewers.
Well, an interesting development. If I look at the leaderboard up there, your party is trailing at 302,000 and it has just surpassed the Freedom Front Plus.
Yeah, we surpassed them a short while ago. It has been a long day because the results are just coming in very, very slowly. But we are quite positively happy about the fact that we are making now strides towards growth. I mean, the results are a reflection of that. And if you look at the map there, you'll be very clear that the white areas are the areas which have not been captured. And in the main, those would be IFP strongholds. And so that once those are in, we should be able to see a surge, and so it's good that that surge will come in on a very strong footing, is already reflected in the scoreboard now.
We are well over the half mark in terms of accounting. Now, do you have a clear picture how the IFP will fare?
Well, we can't preempt because the districts that are outstanding are actually quite big districts. It's quite a huge electorate that will be in those areas. So I'd say we should give it up until maybe 2 a.m. this morning, in the coming morning, that we'll know. But what I think is fundamentally important is that we're receiving these results on the backdrop, really, of some serious irregularities and concerns and shortcomings on the part of the IEC. And in an absence of credible explanations insofar as the IEC is concerned. On Tuesday night already, Prince Buthelezi was alerted to the fact that people were being bussed in from Swaziland and Mozambique to come and vote into the country. We alerted the IEC to that effect, and communication between Prince Buthelezi and Mr. Mashinini took place. But what has subsequently happened on election day, the fact that you had indelible ink rather, which was no longer indelible, you had a shortage of VEC C forms, you had shortage of ballot papers, voting stations not opening on time, the zip machine not being live, and so on, and that has called into question the collective integrity of the vote, because people are now said to have voted twice or more, and then the arrests are a testament to that. And so this morning we submitted a memorandum to the IEC at the PLC meeting as the IFP, and that has given now rise to an expression to the current investigation and the sampling taking place to determine the extent to which the prevalence of this double voting took place. The issue is, though, Simpiwe and viewers, is that we have brought these issues to the attention of the IEC time and time again, and there's been no action. And our fundamental issue has always been that prevention is better than cure. It's useless to really afterwards want to speak about prosecution, whereas the systems, technical systems and expertise and capacity should be built into the system.
Okay. Unfortunately, we don't have much time, unfortunately. But before I let you go, we've been getting reports of a voter who's been shot dead outside the voting stations. What more information do you have with regards to it?
We have been alerted to that. It seems as if whilst voters were interacting and in some form or other, there was more than one party outside the place in question, and somebody fired a shot, and the IFP has lost a member. We have issued a statement, but we'll be issuing a comprehensive statement tomorrow once all the facts are before us and the police have come back to us with that. But we can't confirm that somebody was killed.
All right, Mkhuleko, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, the big issue here is the irregularities that have been highlighted and flagged by 30 political parties. And I've made several attempts to get in touch with the IEC. I've spoken to the national spokesperson of the IEC, and then she said that the entire IEC has been locked in meetings, and they referred me to the communications department, who refused to talk to me. But now let me bring in the national chairperson of the EFF, Advocate Dalimpofu, or is actually the deputy president. I beg your pardon. Very good evening to you, Mr. Shivambu, thanks so much for joining us.
No, thank you for having us as well, yes.
Okay, first of all, I want your reaction with regards to how the EFF is faring now. It's scored well over 1 million votes. What's your reaction? What are your impressions to this?
Now, look, we are inspired that we have reached the million mark now, because in 2014, at this stage when it was 70% of the votes of the voting stations counted, we're far below 1 million. We're actually far below 500,000 votes. So now we're at this stage, and major metros have not yet been put on the board. More than half of Gauteng is not yet on the board, and you will know that Gauteng is one of our biggest contributions in terms of the voter base of the EFF. It gave us 450,000 votes in 2014, and it looks like in our own confirmation of results from voting stations, almost all VDs are doubling the numbers that we got in both 2014 and 2016. So that number is going to dramatically change and improve, because the EFF is a growing organization. And we're also inspired that we're the only organization that is growing much more significantly and emphatically as opposed to all other parties that are on the board there. You know that the ANC is expected to reach the 11 million. They're still at 6. It is not going to happen. Even with this Cyril Ramaphosa, whom they were saying that is the most popular, clean person, is going to be performing less than what Zuma achieved. That is one of the facts that people of South Africa must know, that Ramaphosa is going to be outdone by Jacob Zuma, whom they had said all sorts of things about, and Ramaphosa was portrayed as Mr. Clean, as a person who's going to save South Africa. But the voters of South Africa...
Now, Floyd, just to interrupt you there, I see that 68% of the votes have been counted. Are the pieces of the puzzle now coming together? Do you have a clearer picture of how the EFF will fare?
It's not 68% of the votes that have been counted. It is 68% of the voting stations have been tallied. So we do not know yet how many votes have been casted by the people of South Africa. What we know is that the major and the bigger voting stations in the metros have not yet been tallied, because the process of verification takes longer for the metropolitan areas. And if you check the previous results, the EFF always fares better in the metropolitan areas. We got more than 500,000 votes of the 1.1 million votes that we got in 2014 from the metropolitan areas. And we are confident that at the end of this process, the EFF would have recorded an emphatic growth, which is going to then redefine politics. And we are confident that there won't be an outright winner in Gauteng. So if there's anyone who thought that they must celebrate Gauteng, it's too early to celebrate, because
just
there won't be an outright winner.
Unfortunately, we don't have much time. But before I let you go, other parties have been crying foul at the irregularities that they flagged, and they're basically saying that the entire process has been thrust into controversy. So what's your... And I do understand that the EFF and as well as the other parties have lodged complaints with the IEC. What kind of complaints are these?
Well, we don't have major complaints that have got material impact on the elections as the EFF. And those small parties must accept the results. Like, they never campaigned for elections. They can't now expect the board to tell them what they did not achieve on the ground. So the small parties must wait. They must stop disrupting the counting process and the verification process here. We do not want to be irritated by people who did not campaign. They thought that the success of the EFF that happened 8 months of its existence in 2014 is going to be replicated everywhere. It is not the case. The EFF had a clearer focus, a clear ideological posture, hard work and dedication. So they must not think that it will apply to all of them. It is only the EFF which is capable of achieving such huge success, not these small parties that are protesting here and irritating the people of South Africa.
Mr. Shivambu, we've been getting reports that your chairperson, Advocate Dalimpofu, has actually sent some of the EFF voters to vote twice as a means of testing the system. Would you authenticate these claims?
I do not know of such. I'm not aware of the chairperson having done anything of that nature. I'm not aware of such.
Mr. Shivambu, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for joining us. A very confident Floyd Shivambu, the Deputy President of the EFF, telling us that they will do very, very well after the entire tally has been completed. They are now trailing at 1,055,000 votes, following closely after the DA with 2.4 million votes. Now, Tsapiso, let's now go back to you.